Was Utah able to answer some of their biggest questions heading into the 2024 season in spring ball? We're going to discuss on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If it's your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media, where you can follow our show at Locked On Utes today. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have the competitive side, and I'm a big fan of Monopoly Go. The mobile hit is a twist on the classic Monopoly game, so join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play Store today. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by the host of Locked On College Football, Spencer McLaughlin. Spencer, always great having you on with us. And I want to do something a little different today. I've talked so much about the questions that Utah has answered, but I always like getting an outside perspective, especially someone like you who covers the entire landscape of college football. So I'm curious for you. You had questions about Utah going into this season. Some of them Utah may have answered, some of them may have not. So I want to ask you, what are your biggest questions you have about Utah? And then I will respond and see how Utah did about answering them over the course of spring ball.
Yeah, I think biggest question number one is how healthy is Cam Rising? Is that going to linger? Because last year, I remember you and I talking on this very show about the prospect of him playing in the season opener against Florida. Is he going to? Well, no, they're going to push off next week. Well, now they're playing Weber State, so you're not going to bring him back for that. But the Pac-12 opener against UCLA, that'll and of course, that never came to fruition, and he's out for the year. That is question number one. Question number two is how does this offense look with all of the weapons that they have, right? Dorian Singer coming in, Money Parks coming back. You've got Brant Keithy back at tight end as well. How healthy is he? That's kind of a side question there. But how does that all gel together? How good can that offense really be? Because I think you look at it on paper and say, okay, that's really – really solid. The Big 12's got a bunch of great offenses. I think Utah's got one of the better defenses, maybe the best defense in the entire Big 12. There's a couple other solid ones, but Utah with Kyle Whittingham and company's got to be at the top of the list. And then question number three, and then I'll turn it back over to you, JT, is without Jonah Ellis and a couple other key losses defensively from a season ago, what are the replacements looking like? Utah has had their spring game come and go, and we haven't had a chance to talk about it just yet, you and I specifically. So those would be the questions I look at. How do the offensive weapons flow? What's the health of everybody? And how do you replace guys like Jonah Ellis on what was, once again, one of the best defenses in the Pac-12 a year ago? RIP.
Yes. I think what's really encouraging is I feel like Utah answered all of those questions. There are other smaller answers we can dive in, questions we can dive into later, like Utah maybe didn't answer this, or we still have to wait and see till the fall. And in some ways, do we have to wait and see until Cam Rising is actually getting hit? Sure. But Cam Rising looked like Cam Rising. You could just feel the energy even from people you talk to who were able to go up to the first open practices on the Hill. Cam is back. I mean, that was kind of a prevailing theme, right? Like, this offense is back. The playbook is open, and the potential to be more explosive is there. Cam had over 200 yards in the spring game, tossed a couple of touchdown passes to Money Parks too, and just looked really good and confident. And the one thing that was so cool to me to watch for watching Cam run this offense again is how decisive he was, how quick he was to get rid of the ball, to go, okay, you're not open, boom, moving on to my second read, and I'm hitting them there. Because obviously that was something Utah didn't have last year in a Bryson Barnes, and even in the other quarterbacks in the game. Although Isaac Wilson did look really good, I will give him a lot of praise and credit too, because I thought I was very impressed by what he showed. But Cam looked really good in the spring game. Obviously, he's not going to be as mobile probably as he used to be, but I mean, for everything we saw, he looked fine mobility-wise as well, but just really encouraged by the accuracy. Of course, there was a day or two he threw an interception and things like that in spring and during the spring practices, but in the spring game itself, he looked really strong there. Then moving on to the playmakers, Dorian Singer looked great. Over 90 yards in the spring game. All of spring camp, he'd been highlighted as one of the favorites of Cam Rising. They had been throwing together even before spring practice started. He looks like the clear-cut number one receiver but he might not even be the number one pass catcher because Brant Kuithe was also back out there and healthy. There was a critical third down in the spring game where, of course, Cam found his old reliable Brant Kuithe. He looked nice and impressive out there too. You got a guy in Money Parks who I mentioned that Cam hooked up with him twice for touchdown passes. One of those being a big play too. We saw what Money could do on the very first play of the season last year when Bryson Barnes found him, and that was kind of where his season peaked. So it was disappointing that we didn't get more of that. But as for other guys, Landon King had a nice spring game. Carson Ryan is a guy who's coming along, still excited to see where everything ends up with him. But even a Micah Pittman is a guy who him and Cam had connection going back to
Carson Ryan. Sorry to cut you off. Carson Ryan, the UCLA tight end transfer, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tandem. I think when you go Kuithe and then to Ryan,
yeah,
I think that's once again Utah prioritizing that position, and I think they're too deep there. Again, as solid as anybody in the Big 12.
Yeah, and they got a third guy in Landon King who he is dangerous. I can show you his catch radius and some of the things he can do too. He was this kind of became the emerging pass catching tight end after Thomas Yasmin went down last year. I expect to see a lot of 3 tight ends on the field with Utah because I think they have those type of bodies overall out there. So yeah, I mean, this team is looking healthy. The wide receivers this offense appears to be more explosive too. And last but not least, I was trying to remember what your last one was. It was the defense and the addition. So what's nice about Utah, especially in the secondary, is this has kind of been the theme throughout the offseason. In Morgan Scalley and Sharif Shaw, we trust. Because whenever you move on from guys like a Cole Bishop and Sione Vaki, and by move on, I mean those guys moving on to the NFL draft, of course, you have to have other guys where you're like, okay, how do we feel about the guys in this spot? But the truth is, Utah has continually moved on from guys in the NFL, guys from college to the NFL, and their secondary has been really good. Teo Johnson has been elite during spring ball. And then you have 3 other guys in Gilman, who's coming over from Stanford, Nate Ritchie and Jonathan Hall, all who impressed in spring ball, as well as have game. Obviously, Gilman with Stanford and Nate Ritchie and Jonathan Hall, especially in the bowl game. They looked awesome. Ritchie's a guy who he was a mission guy. So we saw him in 2020. Then he went away. During the spring game, he looked like, and just throughout last season, was getting closer back to that 2020 form. So really encouraged by the progress he's made. And then let's look up front really quick. Van Fillinger and Connor O'Toole. It was a really strong defensive line for Utah last year. O'Toole was supposed to be this team's best pass rusher, according to Coach Whittingham, before the season started. You can see the tools for him to be that this year. Van's been a part of this D-line for a long time, and that's without even diving into the other depth pieces that already exist along there. Now, Liabani Dumuni is out for the season, so if there was an injury at a linebacker, that could potentially be a concern. But you got Lander Barton and Karene Reed there, so I'm feeling good about the group that Utah has defensively replacing their guys and the potential for them to have a more high-powered offense.
Yeah, I think all those things, in spring ball are what you want to hear as a Utah fan, right? If you're talking about, as we will, how Utah lines up as one of the favorites in the Big 12, those are really, really important questions to answer. And I think that the defensive culture is something that, I always inherently trust with Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley there. And, the way that they maintain coaching continuity on both sides of the ball is just really, really impressive. And I think that's one of the things that makes me feel really good about them going into the Big 12. They've had a good offseason, Cam Rising coming back. And if the defensive side of the ball is as reliable as it has tended to be over the years, then yeah, they should absolutely be one of the Big 12 favorites.
And that's exactly where we're going to be diving into in one moment, as I appreciate you, Spencer, teeing that up for me. But first, want to talk to you guys about one of the sponsors of our episode of Locked On Utes today, our great friends at FanDuel. It's playoff time, and the NBA, NHL, and baseball season is, of course, in full swing. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. Once again, it's code Locked On, capital LNO for on, Locked On, one word. FanDuel is America's number one sportsbook. And speaking of FanDuel, we got the NFL draft coming up too. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to bet Caleb Williams to be the first overall pick because we know that is a done deal. But Spencer, I'm curious for you. Is there a certain number of quarterbacks you think are going to go in the first round? What are you most looking forward to about the NFL draft?
I think 4 is the minimum. Four is the bare minimum for quarterbacks that are going in the first round. I think that Penix is going to get underdrafted. I think the injury concerns and him being older are going to lead to him falling further than he should relative to what he's capable of being in the league. But I'm a huge Drake May fan. I think Caleb
Oh, wow.
Williams.
Okay.
I know this isn't popular in a Utah show. I think Caleb Williams is awesome. I think he is crazy, crazy good and worthy of being the number one pick. But I've seen Drake May a few times. I'm really impressed with that guy.
He's fun. It's a good quarterback class. Going to be fun to see how it all plays out Thursday night. Make sure you guys head over to FanDuel today. Check out all the latest odds. All right, Spencer, looking at if Utah is still the favorite in the Big 12. There are lots of other spring ball camps going on out there. I'm curious for you, after what we just talked about, all the things I'm encouraged about with Utah, and after hearing all the other reports coming out of the various Big 12 spring camps, do you still have Utah as the favorite in the Big 12?
I do. Yeah, I haven't really seen anything dramatic shift in a way that leads me to think that, one team should be the favorite over them. I don't think they're a lock to win it by any means. You look at what, FanDuel thinks about their conference title odds, and they have the shortest odds at about plus 300 the last time that I checked. You look at other conference title contenders, Ohio State's about plus 140, Oregon something around the plus 200, plus 250 in the Big Ten. So what that's telling you is Vegas sees a larger gap between Oregon and Ohio State and the rest of the Big Ten compared to what you've got with Utah and the rest of the Big 12. I think the Utes should be the favorite, but are they a lock to win it? No, I just have a hard time betting against Cam Rising and Kyle Whittingham. Yeah. Thank you for helping me spit that one out. They won a couple of Pac-12 titles together, and I think that league was better than what Utah is going to face in the Big 12 this year. I think Kansas State is good. You can never rule out Oklahoma State. I'm not high on Arizona. I'm actually pretty down on Arizona. They've been able to keep some key guys in the portal. They've also lost a lot in the transfer portal. They lost guys that maybe you haven't heard of, right? Like Bill Norton along the defensive line, or Ephesians Pryzak on the perimeter defensively in the secondary. There have been about 9 portal departures from Arizona up to Washington. And I don't think Arizona has got the talent base and depth to maintain that level. And I think it's a bummer for Wildcat fans because they bottomed out, and Jed Fish brought them back from the ashes like a phoenix. And if he stays at Arizona this year, guess what? They're probably a playoff team. They'd probably be my Big 12 favorites. I mean, Cam Rising versus Bryson Barnes, that makes a huge difference. But I'm sorry to bring up a wound there. Arizona smacked Utah in the face. They were they should have beaten USC on the road. They could have beaten Washington at home. They won 7 straight to end their season. Jaden Delore getting hurt, Noah Fafita getting inserted completely changed that team. So, they've got a solid foundation with a great quarterback and a receiver, but they lost an offensive lineman to the NFL. They lost the running back, Jonah Coleman. They lost their tight end from last year. They lost a couple other receivers. Like, you look around, you go, oh, wait, they've lost more than half a dozen starters from last year's team that went 10-3 and was a 10-win caliber team. That was not a fluke. And I think that Arizona, for those of you who are into the gambling side of things, their win total on FanDuel is 8.5. I'd hammer that under every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I don't think they're a 9-win team again this year in the regular season.
Are they your golden pick like Cal was last year?
Well, Cal was my golden pick to go over. I was hammering that over all day long and 3 times on Sunday, and I was absolutely right. But oddly enough, I'm just trying to be unpopular with Utah fans today. Colorado is the team that I think is an easy over. And by the way, Colorado has followed the same trajectory as Cal did last year on formerly Locked On Pac-12, because Cal's win total was 4.5 in the spring. I was like, no, go over. Then it went up to 5.5, and they went 6-6. Colorado's win total was 4.5. I again came on my show and said, excuse me, no, that's not going to happen. They're going over. And again, the power of podcasting, you could call it. The win total went up to 5.5 on FanDuel. I still like the over. I think Colorado is a 6 to 7 win team. I think their ceiling is 8. I don't think they hit that. I think they're probably in the 6 to 7 win range, and they comfortably go over that 5.5 number. So I think that in the Big 12, there's a great depth of teams, but there's no dominant team. And that includes Utah, by the way, who I'm picking right now to win the Big 12 until I see something to change my mind. I think that Utah should be the favorites, and they are the favorites. But there are a lot of teams that could get in the mix. I don't think Arizona is one of them, but I'd look for Kansas State. I'd look for Iowa State could be a sleeper in there. You can never rule out Oklahoma State. I don't think TCU is a horrible team in 2024. I think they have a bounce back year after they had a regression year. I think they're an 8-9 win team. It's going to be a really, really fun conference.
It's going to be a really fun conference. And I appreciate you sharing that insight as well, since you also divulged that you helped move some lines last year, the power of podcasting, as you stated. So we appreciate that extra
podcasting indeed, my friend.
But no, I agree, especially like Utah fans. If you guys can do this with me, imagine we are not Utah fans for a moment. And let's say Oklahoma State was the team who had a quarterback who hadn't played in a year and a half. And even though they won back-to-back conference championships with him and he looked really good in spring ball, it's understandable to still be skeptical. Like, how's he going to do when that defensive end comes in and hits him? I understand why that concern is out there too, and hence why Utah is the favorite, is because it's like, well, you have confidence Utah protect him. He's been taking the time off. He should be good, but there's still always going to be those questions there, even though we tried to answer them to the best of our abilities in the last segment. So we talked about where Utah sits in the Big 12, and obviously I still feel they deserve to be the favorites too, for the talent they have returning back and all of the questions that I feel like they did a strong job of answering. But Spencer, I want to know this. Is Utah a top 10 team right now? Are they a top 15 team right now? Or are they a top 20 team right now? And if you say they're outside of the top 20, then I do have the power to remove you from this podcast. I do just want to know.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't put them outside the top 20 to be sure. I think somewhere in the 10 to 15 range is probably accurate. I think that's the spot where they should be. Now, we don't have a preseason AP top 25 at this point in time, but I would expect Utah. I'll make a prediction right now. I'll say they'll be the preseason number 14 team in the AP poll. Yeah, I think that's where they should come down. I mean, you talk about a conference favorite. Now it's the conference least likely to get multiple teams into the college football playoff, but still a Power 4 conference favorite that can't be outside of the top 15. And I don't expect them to be, and I don't think they'll be. And I think they'll end the year a lot closer to how they started this past season, when they were 6-1 out of the gates, and then was it 2-4 down the stretch with some stumbles there. I think that was just Bryson Barnes hitting his ceiling. Cam Rising, you keep him healthy, he's not going to hit a wall. He's not going to run into those hurdles that Barnes ran into where turnovers plagued him a little bit, or the offense got sluggish. I mean, heck, they lost the Vegas Bowl to Northwestern. What was it, 10-7?
14-7, but we all try to burn that out of our memories.
Yeah, 14-7. Like, you're not holding Cam Rising to 7 points. Mm-hmm. You can hold Bryson Barnes to that. He's going to start at Utah State this year, and you know what? Godspeed. And I think he could be a solid starter for the Aggies up there in Logan. But that's where, like, he's a backup Power 4 quarterback or a starter at the Group of 5 level, and Cam Rising is a first-team all-caliber guy at the Power 5 level. That changes everything with your offense. So I like this Utah team a lot, and I think that they are more than deserving of being inside the top 15 preseason. I don't think I would go top 10 until I kind of see how everything gels together and how well Cam Rising, it's not a doubt, it's a question. These are distinctly different things. I've had to make this point to Alabama fans before. I am not doubting that Jalen Milroe and Kalen DeBoer can fit together. I am questioning how they fit together, because Jalen Milroe is a guy who makes plays with his legs. He moves outside the pocket. He has quarterback runs. Kalen DeBoer wants his quarterback to stand in the pocket, read the defense, and throw the ball. Okay, those are. I'm not saying Milroe can't learn that, or that DeBoer can't work in plays to the offense that adapt to Milroe's skill set. I'm just questioning which way it's going to go and how effective that is going to be. So I don't doubt that Cam Rising can come back and be his old self. I just question, because if you haven't seen a guy play football in 18 months, that's a very fair question to ask. But I have confidence that he can. It's just a matter of whether or not he'll be able to line up on Saturdays and do it. And of course, you can never sleep on that first game of the year on August 29th.
You'll have to, every time I have you on, you'll have to hype that. You've done a good job of it so far. You've done a good job.
It's gonna be a blast. I will just assure you that the T-Birds are not gonna just roll over and give it to you. They are gonna come out swing. Ask Arizona State last year what kind of effort you can get from the T-Birds in a game like that.
Broadcaster, so you keep really good notes. Do you remember the score the last time the T-Birds came out to play Utah?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah. You guys could, I think it starts with a 7 and ends with a 0. And anyways, we don't need to say the exact numbers. That's for a future
Doesn't ring
episode
a
of
bell.
Locked On Utes. We won't be having you on for the crossover that week, though. So that'll be fun to
Yeah.
imagine when we get to August finally, which still feels so far off, but we can dream. And we
It'll
are
be here
inching
before we know
closer.
it, I hope.
Yeah. Exactly. One thing we're caught up in right now is not just the football transfer portal. We got the basketball transfer portal going on too. And one of Utah's top players last year, Deivon Smith, just entered the portal. We got to talk about what his departure could mean for this running Utes team. We're going to be discussing that in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our friends at Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. They have prices on the Gametime app that actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They have all those great last-minute deals, all-in price view from your seat, their low-price guarantee. Gametime truly takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And you don't just have to buy MLB tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concert, comedy, theater events near you, and so much more. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on seat selections ahead of the games and events. Plus, you get that all-in price view from your seat too, so you know exactly what kind of deal you are getting. Gametime will also credit you 10% of the difference with the Gametime guarantee, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDONCOLLEG, with capital L in locked, O in on, and C in college, all one word, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Also want to talk to you all about another sponsor of our episode of Locked On Utes today, our friends at Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. And that's when you have to dig deep and know that you can dig it out after that in the second half, because that is where you guys can have success, because that is where you can also find success on the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go, which lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and biggest empires. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmark with a wrecking ball, charge other players for rent on your iconic properties, and so much more. You can even work with your friends to crack open a community chest and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play Store. Spencer, the running Utes fell short of expectations because they missed the NCAA tournament, but they had a fun run in the NIT. And a big part of that was Deivon Smith, who was a triple-double machine for Utah. And he will not be a triple-double machine for Utah in 2024, 2025, because he is in the portal. And we'll be looking for a new home. Averaged 13 points per game, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, 46% from the field. And yeah, this is a tough loss for a guy who was so fun to watch and part of the success, and just that electric ability to do so many different things for this team. I'm not surprised he's moving on in the era of NIL, and just another opportunity to potentially set himself up in a better position, right? Like Deivon did all the things he did with triple doubles, yet Utah still missed the tournament. There are other places that he can go and do that, and the team around him will probably be a little better, and he'll for sure make the tournament. So to me, I understand why he's going. It's definitely a hit for Utah to lose a guy who can do so many things well, but this also doesn't feel like a loss you can't overcome, because even with him playing as well as he did, they did still land in the NIT. So going to be interesting to see how Utah goes about it. But nonetheless, especially at the moment with no other guard at the moment committed to Utah in through the portal, definitely a hit.
Yeah, it is. And I think that, whoever lands Smith is getting a guy that, as Utes fans know, is just tremendously talented and just fills up a stat sheet. And those guys can be really, really hard to find in college basketball. I know the show I host is Locked On College Football, but I'm a big college basketball fan in many, many respects. And, I think that Smith is a tremendous player, but certainly there are options. That's the good news for Utah here, is as you look around in the transfer portal, the window is still open for men's basketball players to enter the portal. I'm not sure how much longer it lasts. I know the football portal goes until the 30th for when guys can enter, but an important thing to remember is that you can leave the transfer portal at any time. You have these windows to go into the portal, but you can come out of the portal whenever you feel like it. And there's still a lot, I mean a lot, of talented players there in the portal for the Utes to go after. I don't know what their high school basketball recruiting efforts in 2024 have looked like, but I would think that Craig Smith is going to go to the transfer portal to try and find someone to replace Deivon Smith. And it's a hard guy to replace, but that's the good news is the number of options available is pretty darn high, and the Utes just have to be able to find the guy that can make that right fit.
Wednesday, May 1st. So by the time this is coming out, it will actually be a week, the day of when it releases, the portal will remain open. So be interesting to see who ends up where and how Utah ends up managing it in a monster year for Craig Smith, and not the year you would like to be going into the toughest college basketball conference, at least regular season wise, as you got to respect what the Big East has been able to do. But we'll see what all happens there. Spencer, always great having you on. If people want to follow more of your work, where should they head over to?
Yeah, I'm on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @McLaughlinCFB. I host Locked On College Football and Locked On Ducks Monday through Friday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And I know that there are viewers out there in the state of Utah. I've had a couple people within the past couple months come up to me and say, "Hey, man, I watched the show. I enjoy it." I'm like, "Oh, really? College football or Ducks?" Like, "Oh, Locked On Ducks." I'm like, "Really? Oh, well. Nice."
Hey, got some sleepers out there.
Would have expected the other one, but we'll take it no matter what. But JT, always fun to come on with you, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, just do me a favor. No talking about Utah. I don't want you moving the line and any too high. I don't want you overhyping them. I need you to stay off Utah.
8.5 is the win total right now.
8.5. Yeah, something like that. What are you feeling too early?
I'd probably lean towards the over there. Not 9
and
and 3.
Why you're going to come, and that's why you're coming back on.
Yeah.
Right
oh no, it's not. It's 9.5.
Don't answer the question, Spencer. Thank you guys for listening. As always, great having you on too, Spencer. We'll be back with you tomorrow, getting you guys ready to see where the Utes are going to end up in the NFL draft. We'll talk to you then.